Hi, everyone, and welcome to Transitions. Today we're broadcasting in the Hunters Bay Satellite Studio at Nipissing University. I'm Ann Wagner, your host, and today I'm joined by Christine McCarter from Muskoka Parry Sound Community Mental Health Service. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Ann.
So, Christine, you specifically work with the Early Episode Psychosis Program. Can you tell us a little bit about who the clients of the program are?
Okay, thanks, Ann. Yes, so we work with young people from the ages of 16 to 35 that are experiencing symptoms of psychosis across Muskoka.
And can you tell us a little bit about, for those of us not familiar with the term, what psychosis entails?
Okay, so it is a symptom that revolves around some confused thinking, difficulty sometimes tracking conversations. People can sometimes be, a little less active or a little bit more active depending on how they're affected by the symptoms. Sometimes they're experiencing things called delusions, which are fixed beliefs that, something might be happening, but other people around you may not think that they're happening. And often people sometimes feel quite anxious when they're living with psychosis, or sometimes they are flat. So sometimes the symptoms are very specific to the individual that's living with them. And then a common one is that people experience hallucinations, that means that they sometimes hear, smell, or see things that are a little bit different than usual.
So I imagine that would be very disruptive to everyday life.
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming when it first happens. Some people can live with the symptoms for, upwards of 2 to 3 years before they get help. So our goal with the program is to provide education in the community, to the schools, to physicians, to ensure that people are getting care as soon as possible so that they're not unwell for a long period of time.
And I imagine that oftentimes if you're in a psychotic episode, it'd be quite frightening. You wouldn't necessarily know what's going on with you.
No, because a lot of people that have been living with it just see it as something that's always been part of them, and they're confused. And it often isn't until some of their behaviors are affected, like they spend more time in their room when they normally wouldn't have done that. They just aren't involved with their peers as much. Sometimes they're a little bit more suspicious about things that are going on in the house. So there's often a shift in their baseline, what we call like a baseline functioning, that they're just different, and sometimes it isn't until you get a lot of the other symptoms like the hallucinations and delusions that people really start to realize that something's going on.
Okay. And then how do they come to be involved in your program?
So people can come to us, self-referrals. Sometimes people will just call us up and say that something's going on. They can call the program directly, or they can call Community Mental Health and go through the intake screening process. Schools will sometimes call us. Physicians will sometimes call us. Hospitals, family members. So we're not too rigid with our criteria with respect to service. People will just call us, run by sort of the scenario of what's going on, and then we figure out how we can help them out.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be the person who's experiencing the symptoms themselves. It can be someone who's in contact with them, who knows them, and who recognizes that something's different with them?
Yeah, they can call us and they can just have a conversation about some of the things that they might see that are going on for, their loved one or the person that they care about. And we'll, try and do a bit of a screening to figure out what might be going on. And then we can just reach out and figure out how we can help.
And I imagine that would reduce a lot of stress for someone, for example, who has a family member who they know is acting differently. They're concerned about them, and they don't really know where to turn.
Yeah. I mean, we encourage people to go sort of through the mental health screening process because it does highlight some of the different areas that someone might be, struggling with. And then the screening process allows us to direct them into the most appropriate program. So that's how a lot of this referrals come into the agency, and then we filter them out to the appropriate programs. But yeah, I think it's a relief for the family and schools to know that there's services out there that can help young people if they're struggling.
Absolutely. And so when you refer to the screening process, does that involve talking with someone, or is it a tool online?
No, the screening process is it takes about 20 to 25 minutes with our crisis intake team. They ask you sort of question and answer around sort of what's going on for you. And then they'll screen for symptoms around psychosis. And if it's determined that that's what someone's living with, then we would set up assessments and look at getting, firm, conclusion that someone could be living with that, diagnosis, and then they would get directly referred to our program.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then once they're part of your program, what sorts of supports are offered to them?
We're sort of a do all what needs to get done kind of program. We do what we call case management. So oftentimes people will come in and they don't have, money for, let's say, medication, or they don't have money for just day to day, and we'll assist them in getting connected to, the appropriate social benefits in the community. If they don't have a GP, we'll make arrangements for that. Psychiatric appointments, we can facilitate getting those arranged. Crisis support is significant, especially for someone that might be first living with psychosis, because a lot of things are unfamiliar to the family and to the clients. So we try and set up safety plans and do a risk assessment just to see where things are at for the family and for the client. We facilitate them getting back to just doing their day-to-day. So, connecting with the school, work, and recreational activities. A lot of the young people in our communities take advantage of the Y and the Sportsplex and, the gyms in Huntsville, just to get them back involved in the community again.
So I'm just imagining what it would be like if I were in that position. If I'm in this period of crisis and I've got all these concerns and my thinking isn't what it once was. I'm feeling confused, for instance. I might not understand what's going on with me. I can become part of this program, and it sounds like it's really broad-based support. You're really going to help me get back on track.
That's our goal, and we really work with our clients to figure out what their goals are. We don't define the goals for them. Some of our clients are just wanting to go out for coffee, and chit-chat, and we take it really slow at the beginning just to engage with young people. We don't want to push our agenda on them, and involve the family as much as we can, or teachers, or other community members, or agencies that might be involved, just to set up a plan that's going to wrap around this young person just to get them back on track.
So you're really interested in building a broad base of support for them, are you?
Yes, that's our goal, because I think that we're only available certain times of the day, and everyone needs a good foundation to be well.
Right. And I imagine it's also very valuable for the family members who may have been coping with the uncertainty of what's going on with their loved one.
Yeah, a big part of our work is working with family and supporting them with whatever comes up. Most of our clients are quite eager to have their family members involved. We have joint sessions as well as individual sessions, and we don't keep secrets amongst, individuals and their families. It tends to be pretty open, unless, of course, the individual has indicated that they don't want that happening. But we do home visits, so we're meeting them in their home, at their workplace, at school, out in the community. So we just try and do a wraparound service.
Okay, so it doesn't just mean coming into the office for an appointment then?
If it's their choice that that's all they want to do is come into the office, then we would respect that. But 90% of our visits are in the community, and we transport clients to appointments and facilitate them getting to the gym and getting to, working on their academic goals and things like that.
Well, it sounds like it's certainly very client-driven, that you support them in making their own decisions.
It is very client-driven.
Fabulous.
Yes.
So we're just going to take a brief break and hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with more Transitions. Welcome back to Transitions. I'm Ann Wagner, and today I'm chatting with Christine McCarter. And Christine, we were just talking about the Early Episode Psychosis program, and you were describing some of the supports that the program offers. I'm just wondering if you could tell us further maybe how the program differs from general mental health services. You're targeting a very specific group of people, are you not?
Yes. We're targeting young people that are living with psychosis. So often they've been involved with a family physician or a psychiatrist, and there's been a diagnosis of psychosis. And psychosis can be a diagnosis that involves schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, first episode psychosis. It could be someone that's living with bipolar with psychosis. So those are often some of the diagnoses that someone may be living with when they become involved with us, or we facilitate them getting the appropriate diagnosis so we can support them with their recovery. So we typically 16 to 35, like we mentioned, and often we see young men and young women, they are encountering some of these symptoms when they're away at school, college or university. Men tend to have earlier onset than men. So sometimes the 18 to 21 for men and a little bit later onset for women. And sometimes we're encountering young people as young as 14 that are being challenged with some of these symptoms. And we call it the prodrome stage, sort of, that they live with those symptoms for a little bit before they actually have sometimes a whole cluster of symptoms. So something may seem just a little bit different. And then, when the whole cluster of symptoms develop, then that's often when other people around them start to realize that something's going on. But the person themselves can describe that something may have been off for a year or a year and a half before they actually come to us.
So this age of onset is not unusual. People can come to realize that they're not alone, that this is a common age at which this starts to manifest.
Yes, and I mean the prevalence is about 1 in 100. So, if you think about a high school with, 1,400 kids, potentially 14 of those kids are at some point going to live with a psychotic disorder. So it's a pretty significant prevalence.
Well, that certainly puts it in context. Mm-hmm. And interestingly that we don't talk about it, that a lot of us aren't aware of those statistics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, mental health itself carries a lot of secrets, let's say, and I think that makes it hard for people to come forward and talk about, especially something that just might not seem like themselves. And when people start putting words to their experiences, it can be a pretty overwhelming experience. And our job is to support them and their families in going through that process and that recovery, so that we get them back on track. Because a lot of these kids are, at school, we've had some, just married, so, our goal is to get them back doing what they want to be doing.
So once they're in the position where they're experiencing these symptoms, it doesn't mean that they can't return to some of the activities they enjoy or follow through on some of their life goals. Then you're saying that many of your clients do return to school and get back to their activities they enjoy.
Yes, they do. Yeah, a lot of them, set really clear goals, and they're very resilient and they're very dedicated that this is what I want to do and I'm going to get back on track. And of course, it involves effort on all of our parts to make that happen, but it's a great group to work with because of the resilience that they have.
And is a part of your work, would you say, also in terms of reducing the stigma? This is an expected part of life that will happen to a percentage of all of us at some point in our lives. Mm-hmm. And we need to find strategies to, as you said, develop resilience.
Yeah. And I think that, there are many things in our lives that we're challenged by. And, mental illness and living with psychosis can sometimes be the challenge that some people face. And I think that our goal is to support, individuals and just getting things back on track. Whatever their goal is, we want to help them achieve that.
And it sounds like a piece of accomplishing that is also supporting the families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a big part of our work is supporting families. And it does tend to be successful if people, involve anybody that's around. It could be friends. We see friends. We do sibling work, worked with teachers, worked with employers, just to provide information and education about what some of the challenges might be to put a plan in place for success.
Excellent. And what advice would you have for friends or family who have someone in their life that maybe they're concerned with and they've noticed this change?
Well, I think it's always important. I think young people don't see their doctors enough. That's one of the challenges. So, checking in with a doctor, calling our crisis intake team and reviewing, some of what might be going on. And we'll try and come up with a plan of moving forward. If we can't help out, then we're going to make referrals to other agencies and resources in the community to try and support that family and that individual.
Excellent. And can you give us any guidance about where people can reach out to get more information? If this is an area of interest to them, or they just simply want to learn more?
There's a couple websites. The Canadian Mental Health Association website is a great one to access. Specifically, there's a website that was developed by a young woman that was living with psychosis herself, and it's called Get Help Early. That's another one that's just specific to living with psychosis. And then we have the regional program out of North Bay called REAP, and they have a website as well that can be accessed with tons of information around psychosis, the symptoms, treatment, and recovery. And then the Muskoka Parry Sound Community Mental Health website has general information around contacting the agency to do the screening process.
Wonderful. And we'll get all the contact information up on our website, our Transitions website, so you can refer to that as well. And so, in your experience, do clients tend to stay long-term with the program, or are there some that then later move on?
It changes with each individual. Sometimes it's just a couple of months, helping them, maybe get on some medication so they can, focus better, concentrate better, and get back to work. Sometimes they need a little bit of financial help just to get that going. Some people are involved for 3 years, some are 5. It all varies depending on the goals that the individual sets and how much support they may require.
And then you also mentioned when we were chatting earlier that some clients then no longer require such intensive support, maybe move on to other support services that are available in the community and maybe even through mental health.
Yeah, Community Mental Health has another program called COAST. So clients would stay involved with us upwards 3 to 5 years. And then if someone was still requiring support after the 5 years, that we would make a referral to our COAST program, and then they would offer ongoing support.
And so it sounds to me like the guiding philosophy is really getting people to reach towards their goals and to attain their goals and to develop resilience in the face of mental health challenges.
Yes, that would be our overriding goal. Yeah, just to get people back on track, yeah.
And so it sounds like if you find yourself in the position of needing help, or if you know someone who does, the first step is pretty straightforward. It's reaching out and taking advantage of the assessment process.
and taking advantage of, the different community resources that are available. So, family health teams have social workers on staff, some of them, so if you're connected there. The nurse practitioners clinic, there's a wealth of resources in our community, and I think sometimes it's just making the call and getting tapped in so that you can get the support that's required.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Christine. It's been a pleasure. You've been a wealth of information. And just a reminder to our listeners, if you have any comments or questions, you can reach us at transitions@hbr@gmail.com. That's transitions, ATHBR@gmail.com. That's the end of this show, and we'll get together.